All right, let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you're joining us from today. And welcome to our Intelligent Operations and Automation Solution Demo Webcast. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Len Thompson, and I'm Broadcom's Mainframe Division Community Manager. And again, I'd like to welcome you to today's session. Before I hand you off to our presenters today, just want to let you know that we are recording today's session, which is why you are all currently on mute. If you have any questions along the way, please use the questions box along the right side of your screen to ask them, and I will answer as many of them as I can. And if I can't answer them, I'll read them out loud to our presenters. If we have time at the end, I'll also let you know how to have your line unmuted if you prefer to ask your questions that way. The recording of today's session will be posted out in the CA, DCI, and MOI communities either later today or tomorrow. And the last thing from me is that we are always trying to ensure that these sessions are valuable for you. With that in mind, we have a survey that will pop up at the end of the webcast. I'd really appreciate you taking a few minutes to give us some feedback so we can make sure that our next session is even better than this one is. And with that out of the way, I'd like to hand you off to John Benbow, who's going to kick us off today. So take it away, John.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Len. Welcome, everyone. My name's John Benbow, and I'm in the capacity of this presentation, the lead product owner for Mainframe Operation Intelligence. So welcome to the Intelligent Operations and Automation Solution Update. Today, we're going to be talking through CA Mainframe Operational Intelligence 2.0.04 anomaly detection refinement. We GA'd that feature in June of this year, and Michal, Kramaric, product owner out of our Prague office, will be talking through that feature. And Hugo Banks, another product owner out of Prague, and he's the product owner for CA Dynamic Capacity Intelligence. He'll be talking us through customer groups for container pricing and IBM Tailor Fit Pricing and the future of DCI. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Michal to talk about anomaly detection refinement.
Hi, my name is Michal Kramaric. Thanks to John for introduction, and I'll be talking about our improvements to anomaly detection. So on agenda today is I'll present use cases of and scenarios of what we have improved, and I have a couple examples that I'm going to share that with you, and then we'll end this part of presentation by discussing when and how can you upgrade and take leverage of this. So first of all, what is anomaly detection? So the MOI, Mainframe Operational Intelligence, consumes metrics of representing the current state. And then we have anomaly detection model, which consists of our proprietary machine learning algorithm and some statistical rules. We are using the Western Electric rules to define what is an anomaly and what isn't. And then we are generating an alert. So something that might be useful to the operator of something happening on the system. Now, as you might know, we have more alerts than we care for. So we have done some analysis of what can we improve and in what scenarios do we generate multiple alerts so that we can reduce this impact to operators so that they can focus on important alerts. And we have identified two that I will now talk about. First one is this continuous volatility. So that means the system is in this state for a prolonged period of time. It may go up and down. The system might think the alarm has a different severity, different impact, and as such might generate multiple alerts for something that is called an alarm episode. And another one is a sudden spike. So it goes up and down for just a single point in time, and it goes back to normal state. In such case, you wouldn't usually want to highlight it to operator as such. At least it would generate all these alerts. So that's too extensive. So now I have few examples that I want to share with you of what we have done. In this case, this is an alarm episode, and I want to highlight this lower part of my screen. If you can see this dashed line, that means this is a composite alarm or an alarm episode consisting of multiple severities. So if you try to compare the upper and lower part of the picture, you can clearly see that this part, this here, has started as severity 2, denoted by this 2 and this little nice bubble. Stayed in this pale green part of green highway, and then it dropped down. So it was closed as severity 2 alert. And now this one in here that went up above this pale green part, dropped back down, and again it was closed by severity 2 alert. So what I wanted to denote here is this difference between a composite alert represented in this dashed line, which is joined together by multiple separate alerts, and in this case right here. And where it will become useful is on this next example. So in here we have a prolonged alarm episode. This is running for 11 minutes. And if you would trace this, it would go up from this pale green part of green highway, down again, up and down. It would change severity multiple times. This portion actually is out of the green highway, so it would change severity from 1 to 2 multiple times in here. This would generate at least 5 alerts, and now we have changed it to 1 alarm episode, as again represented by this dashed line. All right, and the different scenario, or the second scenario, is the sudden spikes. So if you would turn the attention to the left part of my screen, in here you have 3 spikes. These are just single point of outside of the common area. So this would have previously generated a severity 1 alert, but now, as you can see, it didn't. And you can also see that the system returned back to normal. On the right hand side of the screen later, but a few hours later, you can see there are some alerts created, but at least for this period of time, the system returned back to normal. So we didn't need to raise any alarms. And my final example, this is a really nice example for where it gets useful. As you can see, this system has almost no load. Then something happens, it spikes out and returns back to almost 0. And as previously, it would have raised an alarm, and now it does not. All right, before I move on, are there any questions to this? All right, so let me continue with my presentation. I really wanted to show you some real examples from the live system, but in here I have few pictures that compare the before and after state. So what I was presenting is the current state where there were no alarms raised. And in here, there's a comparison in the upper part that's system before. You can see multiple alarm points represented by all these bubbles with a number denoting the severity of the alarm. In the lower part of the screen, you can see that number of alarms is lower because we were joining these episodes together. So instead of all these alarms, you get one. And it is important to point out that we'll be closing the alarm to the highest severity that it had achieved during its lifetime. All right, and a similar comparison for the sudden spike issue. It goes again up and down, up and down. So whereas before it would have raised all these alarms, now on the lower part of the screen you can see there were no alarms raised for this type of situation. So how can you start using these refinement updates? This is available as part of our general release 2.0.04. Once the data are ingested after the upgrade, it will reflect these changes automatically. And you can contact the email to John Benbow for more information. So before I change it to Hugo, for second part of the presentation, are there any questions?
I don't see any questions coming in, Michael, so you can keep going.
In that case, thanks for your attention. I'm passing the ball to Hugo.
And with any luck, I've caught the ball and some, and I'm sharing my screen. Let's hope that's working. Len will tell me if it's not. Okay, so hello everyone, I'm Hugo Banks, product owner for Dynamic Capacity Intelligence. Thought I'd quickly just mention, in case you are not familiar with what DCI is. So we're in the business of capacity management, let's call it that, for particularly the interest of cost optimization. We want to save you some money, and the basic way we work is what we're going to do is we use defined capacity and group capacity limits provided by the ZOS system, and we dynamically manipulate those so that what we do is we can deliver we try and reduce the monthly pricing peak, that very hurtful bill that comes from IBM, by maneuvering those capping limits around so that we have the maximum available capacity for the workload that most users that most needs it. So that's very short if you're not familiar with DCI. Otherwise, we will most happy to give you the in-depth presentation of the whole DCI product. What I want to do today is focus on something that we've developed in the DCI, the latest release of DCI 2. Let me just go, there we go. So what I'll be showing you today is that GA release of DCI 2, which is available now. Specifically today, although our big sell is playing with the rolling 4 hour average, what DCI does do is that in all the data that we collect, we have added the reporting tool. That data, I like to consider it, so we say, a sort of industrial byproduct of our core business, but it turns out that it's actually very useful, and what we're trying to do is use that and enhance how we can present that in our reporting tool, and that's what I want to focus on today. And one of the additions in 2.0 is our custom reporting tool, and I want to show you this by way of 3 separate use cases, which we can look at, which I hope you will consider. You'll find actually very useful in your day-to-day management. So the first one we're going to look at is monitoring your system for consumption of an ISV product. So it might be an ISV like ourselves. It might even be, for example, an IBM one-time charge product, something that is just not the monthly license charge products that IBM deliver. So we can use the DCI process that we already have to see how much we are consuming of those products. We'll also then have a look. It's obviously the new big thing from IBM, we'll look at monitoring what they call their test dev solution, because we're not allowed to call it a container anymore. And then we can also look at some things we can do with the DCI reporting to look at what if scenarios, some things where you want to see what your system would look like, what the consumption would be if you do some reconfiguration. So let's start with monitoring ISV products. So the example here, let's take an example that, let's say we have 3 LPARs that are dedicated to running batch workload. And to help us with that, we have purchased some of our competitor CompuWare's thoroughly lovely throughput manager. But we want to make sure that we maintain within our contracted maximum of this. And for this case, let's take the example, we are contracted 200 MSU of throughput manager. So we want to make sure that those LPARs that are running, the combination, all of them, wherever they are on our system, the combination does not exceed the 200 MSU. So we can use DCI to do this. How do we do that? I like to think it's simple. We'll configure the group in the ISPF, and then we can have a look at the results in the reports in the DCI web UI. Right, so let's start with our starting point. So just so that you're a little bit familiar with what we're talking about here, here is our starting system. This is the DCI web UI that we're looking at here. And so what we're looking at is the system I'm going to be playing with today is running on 2 CPCs. We've got 2 sysplexes. We're running in a country multiplex pricing pattern, and hopefully what the sharp-eyed amongst you will have noticed so far is there's something slightly wrong with this picture. And what we can't see here is that we should see these groups by 2 separate CPCs. And so the snag here is that actually, despite the Broadcom acquisition and all, they won't still give me 2 separate complete Z14 machines to play with to actually run this live. So what we've had to do instead is we're running this in a virtual machine environment, and some clever people, some of my guys who are much cleverer than I am, have set this up as a demonstration environment. We are mocking this up, and I'm afraid we haven't quite just got the CPC element of that fully working yet, although it won't affect the rest of the demonstration. So, but yes, believe me when I say we should see 2 CPCs, and they're called CPC 111 and 222. We like to keep things simple. Okay, so how are we going to do this? First, we fire up DCI in the ISPF. Here's one I prepared earlier. And what we're going to go to here is in the extended menus set up here, we now have number 5, reporting group definitions. And this is where we're going to define the group that we want to see in the web UI reports. Okay, so we are going to add a new group. We are going to call it throughput. Still can't type. That's why. Give it a bit of description to make life easier for our colleagues in the other shift. And now we're going to define which systems are included in this group. And in this case, I've got, as mentioned, we've got 3 systems. So bear with me for this little bit. So it's on CPC1, and it is LPA3, and it is SYA3, and there it is. We're going to add another one. And for good measure, our third and final LPAR. Then we have our group set up. So there's our three systems in our group. There we can see our new throughput group and one more F3 to finish. And yes, we want to save the changes. There we go. That group is now configured. And if the gods of demonstrations are working in our reports, I should now be able to go to our custom group and I can choose from rolling 4-hour average or actual MSU. I take rolling 4-hour average and I can see my throughput group. I press go and there we have it. My newly added 3 systems put together as a group specifically to show me what is my overall consumption of Throughput Manager, and I can see that so far from that lot we would have got to 148. So far so good. So that's it. That is building a custom group. So there's a couple more things that we can do with this though. So on to scenario number 2. That's what I wanted to do with it. So let's find the right screen and jump to scenario number 2. Okay, so we want to monitor our test dev container. So actually, fundamentally the same job. Test dev container is going to be our test and development LPARs that we define with IPM as being part of that new pricing. And I should stop calling it a container. Apologies about that. Sorry, IBM, if you're listening. So we're going to do the same thing again. Well, happily though, if we go to our custom groups, here is one I prepared earlier. So there are we've got 2 test LPARs and a development LPAR, so they are in the group already. Just to save us a bit of time, get out of that, and happily we can see our reports for our container in the same report. So now the sharp-eyed amongst you will see that there are 2 systems here, not 3. That is, but if we look at our status report, we can see that that's because one of our test systems is not delivering data at the moment, which is great for other demos, but less good for this one. But so that's why you can't see it in the report right now. What I did want to mention, so we can use all of the other tools and toys of the reporting system. So we can change the granularity of the report. We can choose any of our historic times. And in 2.0, we've included the apply button here because it does take some time to gather the data. And often you want to change more than one thing at the same time. Rather than wait for it to auto update, we can choose your setting first. And there we go. So for a couple of months ago, there we can see all 3 there because we have data for all 3 in that time period. And that's in the 5-minute granularity, so you can see it's much more detailed. There we go. So now we are monitoring our container. That's it. So what else can we do with that? We might want to, potentially what you might want to do is actually use DCI to, yeah, there we go. Let's have that. So you might want to use DCI to then manage this container. So we've gone, let's say we've gone for the test dev container. We've not gone for the tailored fit pricing, more of that later, but we might want to actually use DCI management for that. Happily, you won't be surprised that it is indeed possible. So what we do is for this we need, sorry, there we go. So we need to add a capping group now. We will then include that in a DCI policy and have the DCI policy running with that group. So here we can see we've got two groups at the moment, basically our systems running kicks and our systems that are not running kicks. So what am I going to do? Also, for the sake of time, I have prepared this one earlier. So here we have an additional policy, and you see we have added an additional group for containers, which if I show you there, we've added our 3 LPARs into this capping group we've set. We don't want to give them any physical capping restrictions, so we set them for 0 for the moment. All I need to do now is what I can do first is, so I've set up the policy. If I'm not sure yet if I actually want to run that in production, so I now have the additional feature which I can run the policy in test mode. So whilst I'm running my H2 policy, I can actually see what DCI would be doing with this other policy if it was active, without actually changing what is active. And this is the new test mode. To start that, I simply take the policy, I say T. Do I want to run it in test? Yes, I do. And that policy is now taken into the test mode, and it is what is basically happening is DCI, once it's done the actual numbers for the actual policy, it then runs the numbers again against the latest data for the policy in test mode, and then displays those results in our test reports, which look, there we go, lost my window, here it is. So, and now we can see in our test report, let's have 1 hour, let's have the CPC summary. So here now is what DCI would be doing if it was running policy number 3 instead of what he's actually doing with policy number 2. You can see this is where I activated the test policy slightly earlier this afternoon. Okay, so third item on the agenda is what if scenarios. So we have our container. What if we added an additional LPAR to this? So we've got an additional LPAR that we primarily do development on anyway. If we took any production and workload off that and dedicated it to development and had a nice conversation with IBM to include it into our test dev solution, I got it right that time, how would that impact the consumption of our solution container? Yeah, that. So happily, again, relatively easy. What we do is we start with another. This time we don't need to make it all from scratch because we can copy this. So give it a name. Okay, now all we need to do is add our additional LPAR. That's added to our new reporting group. We F3, F3, F3 to finish. Immediately, he says, hopefully, if I can find my report, There it is. I can now go to the report, custom group, and I can see my new group. And it's so quick that we don't have any data in there. Oh, there it is. And there we go. So that is all the group. Our new group immediately available with our data, and there is our 3 of our 4, as I mentioned before. We're missing that 4th test LPAR. We go back a couple of months where we did have data for everything, and everything is included in the report. So it is all there. There we go. So we can create these what if scenarios. You can with DCI, you can see what the compound of adding these different systems together, what effect that would have on the consumption, and of course you can use these reports historically, and they are still working in the normal DCI real-time mode, so they are updated every 5 minutes. That is what I wanted to show you this afternoon, our custom groups. Obviously, always happy to answer questions if there is anything coming from that. What I would like to just jump onto first is the final bit of what I wanted to speak to today, and then take questions for everything if there are any. And this is a little bit of a last minute thing. Obviously, you might well be aware that IBM announced tailored fit pricing as a new thing, I think last month now, not very long ago. Just wanted to mention it because, of course, they have made a strong point in their marketing material about this, aiming to eradicate the rolling 4-hour average. And we have been asked before now about DCI, because our core business is management of the rolling 4-hour average. How does that affect things? So, yeah, short fact is that if you are not measuring, if your pricing is not related to rolling 4-hour average in the tailored fit pricing model, on your production workload, which is a very important part of what tailored fit pricing is, then yes, DCI will not be doing balancing and of the rolling 4-hour average. It can, but there is no value to that. But there are a few things still to consider. First thing to say is that DCI in itself will run with any pricing model. It is not dependent, it will not cease working just because you have tailor fit pricing or any other. The real-time reporting will still work. It will still be in real time. It will cover all scales of deployment, including country multiplex. Those are unaffected. As I briefly mentioned, tailored fit pricing applies to production workloads. In the tailored fit model, IBM includes the test dev container, as I've been incorrectly saying all of this time, which does still run on the rolling 4-hour average model. And of course, DCI, both the reporting and indeed the management, will still work on that test dev container equally as it does now. We have observed one thing that customers should be aware of looking at a tailored fit pricing is, of course, that actually one-time charge and ISV software becomes a little more important to make sure that all of the contracts are maintained there, because now, of course, you will have to license one-time charge software for both the test dev container and your actual consumption in the tailored fit. So as I've hopefully just shown, DCI monitoring enables you to do that. So having DCI there will enable you to keep control and be sure that you are within your contract limits for those software products. Also, very quickly on these, so IBM has not yet come up with anything as a sort of management tool for tailored fit pricing. I think that as a user of TFB, the annual consumption bulk that you have in the contract, you'll want to budget that and use it and book it down at a monthly or even shorter scale budgeting exercise, and then measure actual consumption against your budget to see how much of your growth that IBM is so keen on, how much of that growth you can expect at the reconciliation at the end of the year. Of course, DCI reports will do that for you. Tailored Fit will, if you're converting to Tailored Fit, then there is a baselining process that IBM will be conducting, so that it's not a straight save money for straight to a Tailored Fit. You will be baselined across, as they have done, for example, with Country Multiplex before. You'll be very interested in making sure that that baseline is as optimum as you can have it before you make the cut across to Tailor Fit Pricing, and we are very convinced that DCI can help you with that. And finally, I wanted to mention that, of course, DCI does usually, not always, but usually we can offer some additional savings relatively straight away when adopting DCI into your management strategy. But on top of that, then we also can identify additional tuning opportunities, things like WLM settings, hypervisor optimization. There are plenty of ways that you can then additionally optimize your system. So if you are comparing tailored fit pricing, I would suggest it's a fair comparison to consider an optimized version of your current system against what tailored fit could offer, rather than is necessarily what you have immediately at the moment. We don't want to make a Tailor Fit Pricing look like it's a bad option. I'm sure there will be customers for whom it will be a good fit. Simply, DCI will offer the tools that it currently has will continue working even in a tailored fit environment, and what we're looking to develop into the future will be additional tools that will work on all pricing models going forwards. That's DCI. Open to questions if there are any.
There are not any questions at this point, Hugo.
Thank you.
All right, folks, if there aren't any questions, we can go ahead and wrap up for the day. To John, Hugo, and Michael, thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciate it. And for those of you who took time out of the busy day to listen to our presentation, we appreciate that as well. Like I said, the replay will be available out in the community either later today or tomorrow. And that's it for today. So we appreciate your time again, and have a great day, everybody.